there's a huge amount of interest. So my documentary, UFOs, Angels, and Gods, that people can watch on my website, thinkagainproductions.com, continues to perform very well. And not only in my circle of acquaintances, there's people that are very much interested in the connection, because more and more on the news you hear about this. And but I'm invited to speak on shows several times a week. I was on a show yesterday. I'm on another one on the 22nd of March. So I see that really there's a lot of thirst for understanding this. And the interesting thing is that the aliens is a Darwinian concept. Like, Galileo comes up with the telescope, and Galileo was a Mason, a very high-level Mason. So was Newton, and these guys kind of start to develop a new concept of reality for Western culture, where they go, we're in the universe, and you go, well, where's the universe? You go, well, we don't really know what the universe is, but it's a bunch of gases and rocks and stones, and it came from a big bang, and it was developed through chance. And then Darwin's ideas populate the universe. So they go, okay, so we evolved here and beings evolved elsewhere, and now you get the concept of alien. That assumes, of course, that both the Newtonian, Galilean, secular, Darwinian, all of this is true and accurate and gospel truth. If you can completely bank on all of this, then of course you have aliens that exist. But the Bible presents its own parallel view of reality, where it places us in the heavens and on the earth. And in context, in the scriptural text, the heavens represents the sky where the birds fly, and the area just outside of the earth where the sun and moon lies, and the vastness of the universe where the stars are. So the word heavens in the Bible means, among other things, universe. And so what happens is the angels in the Bible, they use vehicles and they travel in the universe, in the heavens, in the Shemaim, or Uranus in Greek. And so the biblical characters we call angels already are in the universe. Already they have flying vehicles in the biblical text itself. And so the Bible already has a view of reality that talks about the universe, talks about angels, talks about, and then with Darwin's ideas and with Galileo and Newton and all these guys, we get a parallel view that leads to the concept of aliens. So basically, when we think of angels, we don't think about what the Bible says about them. We think about the paintings of Renaissance masters that painted men with feathered wings, or little cute boys with wings around their faces, like Cupid type things. We think that's what our concept of angels comes from in the common culture. Or sometimes we imagine another dimension called the spiritual world, where everything happens by magic and everyone is a ghost. These are all cultural notions. So because we've lost the scriptural understanding of the way angels operate, and because we've been introduced with this parallel concept of reality that we're in the universe and they're aliens, we don't see the connection. We think, okay, wait a second, well, is it this or that, or how does it all connect together? So the truth is, first we have to ask ourselves, which is true? Are we in the heavens and on the earth? And are these the hosts of the heavens and the hosts of the earth, and they've been here for a long time? We just call them UFOs because our scientific culture has named them that way. But the Bible calls them the angels and describes them in these vehicles and universe. We've reinvented something we already knew in the image of our scientific culture because of what a few European guys told us was the true nature of reality.
Yeah, you hear about Darwin, and I've had actually a guest on said he was a teacher, and if he went against theories and things like that, I mean, he wouldn't have a job. I mean, he was very serious about it.
That's true. And the university circles politically correct to not adhere to evolution and all of these things. The university is become kind of like the new temple, where ideas are given to the population the way that in the Catholic civilization of Europe, the church would define reality, or in the Islamic world, the mosque defines reality. In the Western world, the university defines reality, and then people graduate from university, they join the workforce, they continue to operate in the reality they've been taught in the media, the official paradigm of the culture, and if you're outside of it, you're insane. So everybody kind of agrees on certain tenets of reality. We are in the universe, Darwin was right, and we evolved here, and beings evolved elsewhere, and it just so happens that they're visiting us right now. But this whole thing is a lot of assumptions, and that we have to agree. We have to agree that exactly the universe is a mystery, and we're just cataloging it scientifically. We have to agree that Darwin was absolutely correct, and we have to agree that it even applies to the universe as a whole, that beings can have evolved elsewhere, and for some mysterious reason they're here. But if we look at the world through the eyes of the Bible, we see that in the scriptural text, the Bible talks about the universe and these angels. Essentially, think about it this way: the UFO phenomenon is the physical manifestation of the world of God and angels. There are no aliens. Aliens don't exist. God has created the universe, the heavens, and He has entered it, and He's created other beings. Some have a lot to do with the Earth's history. That's why they've been here. That's why they're documented by all the nations, because the Bible says that the fallen angels were given the nations and posed as gods to them. So the gods of the ancient world, the Bible defines as the fallen angels. They had offsprings, so they were the giants, they were the demigods, we call them. They chose kings. And then, of course, the story of Jacob, where God chooses one clan and they receive the law at Sinai, and God gives, the understanding of reality, the past, the future, and eventually He Himself comes in the line of King David, and His teachings change the Roman Empire. And as the Holy Spirit comes over the nations, we let go of the worship of the gods and turn back to the worship of the one God. So the Bible already has its own understanding of who these beings are, why they have been in the past of the human world, and then prophetically tells us that they will appear en masse at the end of the age, because this is the time of the final empire, this is the time of the battle of angels, this is the time of the second coming, and this is the last stand of the fallen angels who are here against the second coming of the Lord. And part of their strategy is to rebrand as aliens.
You're saying that Darwin was created to eventually bring along the theory that aliens exist outside of where we live?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've thought about that often. So this is my take on the way that works. Darwin, in his document, he called his theory a hypothesis. He didn't even say this is a fact. He said, look, I've noticed these things. And you can notice, macroevolution, like, oh, well, all the dogs come from maybe the same dog families, or all the wolves. But the very microevolution, like as your lung is taking shape, well, all the various versions of you that didn't have a fully functioning lung, how did they ever survive to have a lung at the end? So Darwin comes up with some idea of something he thinks he's seeing, and he writes it in the document, and he says it's a hypothesis. But suddenly, it gets adopted by this community of atheists in the Age of Enlightenment that are reimagining the new Europe, the new paradigm for the European civilization as it's leaving its, Christian heritage, its biblical understanding. And they take this idea gradually and elevate it as one of the pillars of thought that defines their worldview. It becomes their creation story. And then it becomes more and more adopted and promoted in these university settings. So I don't know if Darwin himself was necessarily given to the worship of something that led him to these things. I think that once his idea was out, it was then championed by, I think it was championed by the world of the fallen angels as a thought that should be promoted in our system. Another really interesting guy along those lines is that can shed some light on the question you asked is Gordon Childe. When Darwin's ideas were coming out at the same time, as though some hand blew the desert sand off the deserts of Mesopotamia, some wind blew the sand off the most ancient cities of the world, and archaeologists started to dig in Mesopotamia to look for the first cities of the world, and there they discovered not only the first Middle East over the 70 clans, and many of the cities we found basically everything that's there. So it was a shock, because they were like, wait a second, we weren't supposed to find the cities of the Bible, that we were supposed to, because we don't believe in it, and now they suddenly found it. So it's just at the same time that Darwin's ideas were coming to the surface of European culture, God, in a way, pushed the sand off the desert floor and said, well, behold, here is the book of Genesis, the other story of who you really are. I mean, why are these beings on earth? Because we are of the world of God and angels. Adam was called the son of God.
I'm Sally Helm with the podcast History This Week. In each episode, we serve as your eyes and ears in history's biggest events, major elections, world wars, scientific breakthroughs. But we also bring you into the smaller, behind-the-scenes stories, the unsung heroes, secret meetings, even personal grudges that changed the course of history. Listen to and follow History This Week, an Odyssey podcast in partnership with the History Channel. Available now for free on the Odyssey app and wherever you get your podcasts.
God. And so we are of the world of God and angels, and that's why we are also entering, the second heavens, which is, just the area outside of the planet Earth. We're sending rockets to it. We've gone as far as the moon, apparently. So this is called the second heavens in the Bible. The third heavens is the rest of the universe, and then there's the heavens of the heavens, which is the temple, the heart of time and space, where God's presence dwells. And we humans are on the earth, and the angels are called the host of the heavens, meaning of the sky and of the universe, and we the host of the earth.
But where do demons dwell?
The great question. The demons and the fallen angels. The fallen angels are dwelling also in the heavens. They're I don't know their exact location, because in Christian culture, when we think of heaven with a singular, we think of this basically paradise, a secret, mysterious place where God and His angels dwell. These are all a lot of cultural notions. In the Bible, the fallen angels, they I think are the majority of the UFOs that we see today. These are the fallen angels. And that's why people are getting abducted and hybrids are being created. That's what the research shows, because when you look into ancient history, going back to the book of Genesis, they create these Nephilim, these giants. And they have been doing this since, the dawn of civilization, in trying to intrude into the DNA of those who are made in the image of God. Even Jesus said, that it is one of his parables, wheat tares, when God planted a seed in his garden, and the devil came and planted a seed in the garden while God was sleeping, whatever that may mean. Maybe it was the Sabbath day, the holy day, the seventh day. Maybe that's when the enemy came. Whatever that may mean. But it's interesting that he says that this resulted into wheats and tares mingled together. So there has been two bloodlines defining the human world. One that comes from, the one who was made in the image of God. The other is the intrusion by these guys. So when we look at the modern day UFO, and once again we see that it's about the creation of, we're not surprised, because we see this throughout Scripture, and we know about it from virtually every civilization, whether it's the Chinese and Indians, the demigods, the children of the gods, whether it's, like, for instance, ancient Hinduism, the Vedic texts, is entirely the worship of Indra, who is a demigod, a child of one of these beings. So the fallen angels posed as gods to the people of the ancient world. They gave scriptures and religions to them. They chose kings, and they gave them bodies of knowledge, such as sciences and things like that, architecture, temple building, etc. And this is well documented. It's just European scholars chose to tell us that all of this was mythology, that these guys came up with it themselves, and they decided to attribute it to these beings. So they imposed their secular view on ancient history and writings and reimagined them for us.
Before you go too far, you said hybrid. Someone might say, what in the world is he talking about? Tell them what a hybrid is.
So Dr. John Mack, who was the head of psychiatry at Harvard University, and Dr. David Jacobs, who was a professor of 20th century American culture at the Temple University in Philadelphia, respected and have important jobs, and suddenly they had this crazy story. In fact, they had a psychiatrist at Harvard. He originally looked into it because he wanted to dismiss it as a modern-day psychiatric disorder akin to demon possession from the Middle Ages, he said. But then he shocked the academic world in 1994 when he published his book called Abductions, where he said it was all true. And same with Dr. David Jacobs and Bud Hopkins. I mean, these are things that the research was being done before movies or books or documentaries. So there was no one really talking about this in the culture. And last time I spoke with Dr. Jacobs, he had 1,200 accounts documented, and they all say the same thing. They even provide drawings. It's a global phenomenon, and I'm sure some of your listeners know about it, and some may even be experiencing it. It's just not talked about in the common culture. Basically, people say that they're being abducted, and the women are impregnated, there's semen removed from the men, hybrids are created, and women are even abducted at the end of the first trimester, and the hybrid is removed. They go to the doctor says, congratulations, you're pregnant. They're like, look, I know, we're pregnant, I know about it, like I haven't had sex in 20 years. And the doctor is like, well, I'm sorry, you're pregnant. And so then when they get abducted at the end of the first trimester and the child is removed, and I know how strange this sounds, but this is really happening in the world you live in. Then they go to the doctor, and the doctor says, they'll get a miscarriage, and the person's like, listen, if I had a miscarriage, I'd know that as well. And so they get diagnosed with something I think called pseudocyosis, which is your body wanted to get pregnant so bad that your body exhibited the signs of pregnancy, which again, the person was like, I had no desire to have a child. So this is the men, when they're abducted, they are hooked up to a machine, and these beings look into their eyes very closely, like inches apart, and they use the optic nerve, it seems, as a conduit to the brain. That's a theory, that's how they do it. But the person immediately gets super aroused and has all kinds of sexual thoughts, and they ejaculate, and that goes in the machine. And so their sperm is harvested, and their DNA seems to be mixed with ours, and hybrids are created. And this, I know it sounds so strange, but Jesus, when he was asked, about the second coming, about what we call a second coming, what they say to him in Matthew chapter 24, tell us about the end of the age. He said, well, the end of the age will be like the days of Noah. Well, the days of Noah was the days of the sons of God and of the Nephilim and of these giants. That's what led to the flood, in fact. But it says in the Bible this happened afterwards. And so throughout history, both in biblical history and in non-biblical history, oral traditions and writings from all around the world tell us about the gods and their offsprings, like Goliath. It's just that secular European researchers, and I'm nothing against, I don't believe in I'm not into the whole patriarchy this or white man that. I don't care about all this stuff. I'm just identifying where it came from. They say that, no, it's all just a story. It's all fairy tales. It's all myths. Our ancestors came from the forest. They were monkeys, and they were very much scared and primitive and looked into the dark and saw all kinds of, monsters and beings everywhere. Eventually, when they got together, Gordon Childe came up with this idea. He was a Marxist. He was in his late 20s, and he was a student of Stalin. And they were shocked that they found all this archaeological proof of biblical cities going back to Noah's children. He said, no. What happened is this. One caveman had a brilliant idea. He came up with farming. They didn't have to think anymore. They didn't have to run after their food anymore. So they sat around, they thought, and as they thought and talked, they came up with all the bodies of science and architecture and astronomy and literature and writing and medicine and mathematics, all these things that are the basis of civilization, laws, religion. They invented it while they were sitting around the bonfire. And as crazy as this idea may be, and as contradictory to the huge body of evidence that we have found, Gordon Childe's idea becomes championed by the university system, and it becomes taught to everybody. And so the average person in the West walks around, and that's what they think. That's their idea of the birth of civilization. And alien astronaut theorists come and they say, well, no, aliens came and gave us this information. But the Bible always had it as it had an explanation, which is not commonly talked about in Christian, Protestant, or Catholic circles. It was just not part of the menu of what you talked about. And that is that the fallen angels were given the nations, and they gave all this information to these civilizations, the same way that God gave his teachings to the sons of Jacob. Like where did Islam come from? Some revelation comes to Muhammad, and bingo, presto, the Islamic civilization is born. Well, all the civilizations attribute their genesis to the laws and matrices of knowledge given by the God. So these beings are not visiting the earth today. They've been here with us always.
You're saying that, okay, I'm going to have to get that book because I haven't heard about that, and I actually just ordered it while you were talking. So thank you for that suggestion there. But what do you think about, because I had a recent interview again with Linda Moulton Howe about the cattle mutilations and, organs and things removed from cows and not a drop of blood to be seen. I mean, have you looked at that phenomena? Because she believes it's extraterrestrial or something that is not human. It's taking these, organs and things from cattle for some reason.
Yeah. So if you kind of come outside of the creationist view of the universe and go to the Darwinian view, then yes, there's extraterrestrials. I mean, who else would be these other beings? You see the world of angels in the Bible, the angels are physical beings. They give knowledge to the creation. They're just more advanced than us when it comes to operating according to the laws of creation. It's just the idea is so stuck in our head. We have a mythological and fairy tale view of angels that our mind tells us that's what angels are. You know what angels are. No. 99.9% of people have never really looked deep into the Bible and studied the concept of angels, so they draw from the cultural view that angels are these magical, mystical, spiritual, types of things. Of course, when we look at these beings flying around and coming and landing and doing all this stuff, we go, well, this is something else. And we by default are programmed to switch to Darwinism and think of them as ET.
It's my phone. I don't have a radio.
There are no aliens. There is no such thing as ET because we are the sons of Adam and Eve. We are of the world of God and angels. We are not in the universe. We are in the heavens. It has 3 sections and a 4th section where God is, and beyond that